I would like to grade you on the quality of your leadership of this distinguished school, and I just want to let you know A+. I had a hard time last night going beyond A+, A+, for witnessing, as many of us have done over the last 101 days, the remarkable achievements of a young president who is just getting started. We know that it's only been 101 days. And what a brief but interesting honeymoon it has been. Barack Obama has gotten off to a great start, and with the leadership of his cabinet, the vice president, who I gave an A-, had I known he would have said this morning that we should not get on airplanes, I would have given him a B+. But to Secretary Clinton, Secretary Napolitano, Secretary Sebelius, and others who are now working so hard in that administration to implement the president's goals and vision, I gave them the highest grade possible. Now, we all know that we wish that the president will hit every ball out of the ballpark. But in the coming weeks and months, he will face some very tough challenges. And John Lewis perhaps said it best. Barack Obama is going to have to get in the way. Get in the way of those who wish to protect the status quo. Get in the way of those who simply want him to fail. And get in the way of those who would have us turn the clock back 8 years. But you and I know that the American people voted for change last fall. And now it's time for us to do battle for change and to work for change, lasting change that will indeed improve the lives of all of our citizens. I have to admit, Dr. Marpin, that I've always wanted to be a part of Morehouse because your tradition, whether it's Morehouse College or Morehouse School, is one that every woman would love to be next to. I can't tell you, I have spoken to my nephews over the years, and I say, if you decide to go to Morehouse, I will pay your tuition. And I haven't succeeded yet with Colin or Roderick, but as God would have it, I have little Chet, who is now an A student, an honor roll student. I have little Elmore. Little Elmore, prior to the election, he wanted to be a basketball player. Now he wants to be like Obama. He said, Auntie Donna, I want to be like Obama. So there's still hope that I will finally get someone into Morehouse at some point, and perhaps to your great School of Medicine as well. It is a pleasure to see Dr. Satcher here. I've always admired his work, his leadership in the field of medicine. You might have noticed that I'm wearing my tennis shoes, not my heels, and there's nothing wrong with my feet. It's just that I have adopted a new code of health ethic in my life, and I thought that my bags would arrive when I arrived, but they're on their way to Kansas City. Now, I don't want to say anything about Delta, because Delta might be sponsoring this lunch. But as soon as I switch to US Air today, I'm going to drag for Delta. But that's all right. I turned 50 at the end of the year. And Dr. Satcher, you would love this. Every time once a year I go and get my physical, it's always after the election. And I don't go during the middle because I know my blood pressure is up. But I go every year. And my doctor say, well, you're 118/70. I say, of course. I wash my mouth out every night. You don't have to worry about me carrying no stress around my heart. My blood sugar is normal. My blood glucose level, I monitor because I know what runs in my family, both sides. And I have to tell you, prior to Katrina, 0 siblings with hypertension or diabetes. Post-Katrina, 4 out of 8 siblings. Stress. And so I've adopted a walk-a-thon campaign. Every city I go to, I walk. And so yesterday morning I got up, I bought me some new tennis shoes. I wore out the previous pair, walking on the mall, making sure that the Dr. Martin Luther King's memorial is being built. I go and check it every day, me and my little dog. Chip Chip is there to sniff. I'm there to look. And I got up yesterday morning, and first time in my life, I've been in New York countless times, I went walking through Central Park. And I had on my iPod. I ran into Aretha the day before, so I started off with Aretha. Now, anybody listen to Aretha know that you can walk. Because her music is always, you know, timely. And before you know it, I ended up at 90th Street. And I have to tell you, I almost caught a cab back. But I walked back, I got my banana, and I said, I'm going to keep it light today because I'm going to be on from 7 until 11, and then CNN International until 1. And I'm going to represent. And I'm going to stand up for Barack Obama, his foreign policy, his domestic policy, his new initiatives, and everything that he's tried to accomplish. And it worked. And so I wanted to put that plug in because we're talking about health care, and we're talking about a lot of things that are very important to me personally and important to our community and important for all of us as we embark upon this new season of change and hope and what it means for our community and our country at a grave time. And this is a very serious time and a very timely conference as the World Health Organization yesterday raised its global alert level in response to the spread of the swine flu. Now, they said that the spread of the swine flu must be taken seriously, and we must all take it seriously. And I listened to Dr. Margaret Chan yesterday, the Director General of the World Health Organization, when she said that countries should immediately activate their pandemic preparedness plans, and countries should remain on high alert for unusual outbreaks of any form of flu and severe pneumonia. And it was reported yesterday that since this has become an international story, that there are now 91 confirmed cases in the United States and 10 states, and that's up from 64 cases in 5 states just 2 days ago. Yesterday there was an announcement of the death of a young child in Houston. And of course, last night during his press conference, the President urged us to take all necessary precautions, including, he was sounding like my mother for a moment, but that was fine with me. Wash your hands when you shake hands or give the fist bump. He didn't say that. Cover your mouth when you cough. All he missed last night was to take a tablespoon of castor oil and chase it down with a peppermint. I guarantee you that is what I will be doing. But in all seriousness, we know that this flu epidemic has no borders, it has no boundaries, and so we're all in it together, and we have the responsibility to protect the most vulnerable of our citizens, including our children and our elders. And while we're here today and tomorrow, this is a great time for us to also remind our community health officials that our homeless are also at risk, and those who are perhaps not able to get this information and this news. And so we must carry this information back into our communities and to speak up and to interject the radio programs or the blogs and say, we need to inform each other about this terrible outbreak of the flu. That is what we must do as leaders and as people who are connected to those who find themselves often out of touch or without the means of knowing what is going on. Healthcare is vital for us right now, especially if we're going to solve many of our other problems in this country. And we should try to use this moment when federal and local and state officials are preparing for the worst to also prepare for the best outcome possible and to raise issues in our community that often people don't hear because there's no crisis. But this is a time we can raise health care issues. And yes, this is a time we can talk about the most vulnerable in our society. I got interested not only in health care and the reentry of ex-offenders into our communities at an early age. I was born, like many kids of my time, in the segregated Deep South, in New Orleans, at Charity Hospital. And thanks to our government, and I say our government, I received, like many of my other 8 siblings, a head start as well as a healthy start in life, with preventive checkups, immunizations, and at least one dental visit before turning 6 years old. Unfortunately, today we must work to strengthen the delivery of health care services to all, especially the working poor in our country and society. Infant mortality and low birth weight are the most sensitive indicators of a community's health, and they reflect the availability and accessibility of preventive health services. We all know that mothers who receive late or no prenatal care are more likely to have a low birth weight baby than mothers who receive prenatal care beginning in the first trimester of pregnancy. And we also know that teenage mothers are at a high risk of poverty, domestic violence, and unemployment. Children who are born to teens are 7 times more likely to live in poverty than children born to older mothers. And now that President Obama has completed the 100-yard dash, it's time that we focus on the long haul and put some of these priorities that we are concerned about on his plate so that when we pass additional legislation, we can rest assured that health care will be a main ingredient of his future success. I'm worried about it because I know that while the president is a good and strong leader, while he has the best of intentions, there are people who are going to put roadblocks in his way. And they're going to tell him to wait, to hold off, and not tackle the tough issues. And my friends, we have to help him by lending our voices to his cause and by standing up for change. It's unacceptable that in our society today that 14,000 Americans are currently losing their health insurance every day. And because health benefits continue to go up, and trust me, I know, it's a sore topic for me. Many small employers cannot afford to offer health benefits to their workers. And that's why the president in the emergency stimulus plan put benefits there so that no American will lose their health insurance when they lose their jobs. That's worth fighting for. That's worth believing in. But it's also important that we find ways for the 46 million Americans, 18% of the population under the age of 65, to also have access to health insurance. This is the coming battle. This is the coming battle. For those of you who like to give grades, I give everybody an incomplete until we pass comprehensive health care reform this year. Now, I'm in no position to talk as a resident of the nation's capital or as a native New Orleanian about the health of any community, including here in Atlanta and throughout the state of Georgia. But just recently, you scored an F. You scored an F. This report was released on April 19th. You scored an F in the premature deaths among African Americans. Premature deaths among African Americans. And people blame this awful grade to the disparities in health care coverage, and of course the lack of funding for mental health services and substance abuse and public health. And we know that this is often the reason why so many of our people get caught up in the criminal justice system. Many of them have mental anguish that needs to be addressed, mental health issues, and of course, substance abuse problems that should be treated. But because we put so much stigma to those with mental health issues and substance abuse problems, that often people would rather hide than seek help and advice. We can do better. And I'll never forget, this is not on my script, but I have to say it. Perhaps one of the most dehumanizing aspects of the rescue effort during Katrina is when I called out to the Federal Emergency Management Association. Notice I used their full name because I'm going to tell you what we thought of them. We called them Federal Employees Missing in Action. And when I said, what about? I didn't spend any time on TV in the first 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 days because I was too busy trying to make sure my father had gotten out, my siblings had gotten out, their kids had gotten out, my aunts, my uncles, a huge family, you can imagine. I'm one of 9, my dad's one of 13, my mother was one of 7. And so when I called up to FEMA, and I knew all of the numbers. I even knew the number to call Robert and George Bush. And on day 1, I said, do you need a translator? What's your problem? People are hurting on their roofs. They're climbing out of their attics. This is the end of the month. Don't you know how poor people live? They live on a budget, unlike everybody else. And they budget their money until the end of the month. And at the end of the month, they spend their money because they know the check will come on Monday or Tuesday. They know, they figured it out. Katrina hit on a Monday. The last weekend of the month, that is when poor people get their stuff out the little way, trust me. First weekend is when they put it in because they got enough money to get it out. And they know that their blood pressure pills run out at the end of the month. I was translating because people are often afraid to talk about poverty. But I grew up in poverty, and I'm not afraid to talk about it. And I grew up seeing men and women like myself. Some of us could get through that narrow road that they paved for us to get out of poverty. Many of us got caught and trapped. Some of us could get through and saw a way out of no way and got across those train tracks. Some of us could not get over the tracks. Some made it, some didn't. But there was no difference between me and those who got stuck or couldn't cross over. And I was raised by parents who wanted me and anyone else who got out and over to come back and bring others with us. And so for me, this is never going to be a political issue because it's popular. It is a moral issue because it's right. We don't have bad children. We don't raise prisoners. We don't stigmatize people because they've fallen down. Even Scripture tells you to pick them up and bring them out. We redeem them. When Jesus was at that well, he didn't care what that woman had done before. He lifted her up and she lifted him. The stories could go on, but I always tell people, read it, believe it, and then act. But when I call my own government, and I'm a taxpayer, God knows they get me. Sam is my husband when I'm not with anyone else. He's my paper husband. I don't know what he provides, but he shows up every quarter and once a year. And that once a year he shows up, he wants more from me than any man I've ever been with. And I just give it up. Knowing that I don't give it to him, he's going to take it and then going to break me in the process. So I call the government. I say, please, my sister Sheila. She's number 2. When we were kids, Sheila had a brain tumor. My mother wanted my sister to get well, so she took her back to Charity. And they operated on her. The tumor was benign. And so they removed it, and perhaps they took some other stuff out with it. Sheila never grew up, but she remains alive. And Sheila has good sense, but it's often the sense of a 14-year-old, not a 48-year-old. But she has good sense. And she's my sister, and I love her, and I promised my mother before she died, I said, I'll take care of Sheila, don't you worry. I'll take care of everybody. Anybody I can, I will. And so before the storm hit, I said, Sheila, if you can get out, go with Chet, go with Kevin, go with Lisa, go with anybody. They wouldn't let them out. So she was in an assisted living facility. And I said, Sheila, if you can't get out, fill your bathtub with water, keep the candles, and try to stay in touch with Lionel, my dad, and my other sister, Ziola. My sister, Ziola, was a nurse. I said, stay in touch, Sheila. Somebody will come and get you. On the day the storm hit, I lost touch with her and lost touch with my father and a couple of other siblings. They had no cell phone. They had no other means to communicate. Oh, you should see my dad now. He is so technical, Al Gore would think he invented the internet. But I called the federal government because I thought I could get through it and say, please, 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 go and get people in assisted living facilities. Go and get people in halfway houses. Go and get them in senior citizen and public housing projects. And my government told me that their priority was the Superdome and the convention center. They really just wanted to move those people out of the way so the world would stop seeing how they were treating the least of these. I was so angered by that I called Wolf Blitzer. And I said, Wolf, I need a favor. He said, anything you want. James Carville had been on TV. Tim Russett, my old friend, the late Tim Russett, had been on TV. Everybody was pleading my cause and my case. I said, but my government just said something to me that bothered me, and I'm going public. And I said, I need you to do me a favor. He said, what's that? I said, I'm going to send you a picture. Went ahead and scanned the picture of Sheila, her address, and I told Wolf what had happened, that my government said that people who live in those places were not a priority. And I said, how dare we reduce human life and suffering to just a very few who are vocal and making noise, but not those who might be suffering and dying in their own homes or in public places. My sister was rescued that day, and she was rescued by a man, Eddie Lopez. His mother had watched it on TV, called her son and said, I need you to do me a favor. Donna has a sister on Tulane Avenue, 3943. Eddie Lopez worked for the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries. He had a boat. He rescued my sister. Only 3 other people came out that day alive. Everybody else had drowned. I'd say this because we can't afford as a nation to start picking and choosing when it comes to a storm in life or when it comes to a recession, who we're going to save and who we're not going to save. We can't prioritize some and not others. And so when we talk about health care, we talk about how we're going to become a better country, we better not start picking and choosing. We better not say that if you have a criminal record or background, you're not qualified. That's what we've already said about their voting rights. That's why 5 million people who are eligible to vote can't vote, because we say you can't come back and vote. That's wrong. And so I've never had a problem speaking up. I had a problem shutting up. But the incarceration of so many of our citizens, as Ms. Treadwell mentioned, is immoral. When are we going to stop it? When are we going to find alternative ways? When are we going to provide a real way back for people who have made mistakes and, yes, committed crimes and errors in life? When are we going to provide for them a pathway back home, into their communities, and into our families? And I say into our families. Because if you're lucky enough to not have somebody, God bless you. But many of us are not. And I love all of my friends and cousins who are trying to come back. Look for jobs, get some health care, get on with their lives, find some skills. Donna, do you know where I can go? Is Northern Community College, DC College, what can we do? We have to help each other. The prison population in the United States has quadrupled in the last 25 years. And according to a study just recently published by the American Journal of Public Health, over 2.3 million inmates must rely on their jailers for health care. And although prisoners have a right to health care, here's another area where we must be concerned. We all know that the quality and access to this care is always and often deficient. Sometimes depends on the jailer, depends on their mood, their attitude. Inmates have a high rate of chronic medical conditions, including viral infections. And so if there's a public pandemic or a public alert, we should also care about those incarcerated as well. In addition, substance abuse and mental illness remain very strong, and we have to do a better job of providing access while people are incarcerated so that when they come back, when they re-enter society and back into their community, they can pick up their lives and they can rejoin their families and their communities. And we need to advocate for prison-based programs to enhance parenting skills. I'm putting that straight out there. I wish I had those videotapes and the internet, you know, like I can turn on my little computer now and I can sit in front, I can Skype. Y'all know how to Skype? You know, don't bring your nieces and nephews to your house. They really transform your house. They downloaded stuff on my computer, and from that on, I've been an iTunes. I download more appliances than I can even afford to look at. I downloaded a dictionary the other day. I said I might need it. But we need to have prison-based programs to enhance parenting skills. People, they leave their children, and when they come back, their children are here, and they're here. It creates discomfort and dysfunction, and we need to help advocate for that. We need to also ask for literacy classes, raise education levels, and prepare our inmates, our ex-offenders to get ready for life outside of prison. And we know that when we go up to, whether it's the Capitol Hill or the State House or the local budget officer, they're not going to support us with all of these initiatives, but we still have to advocate for them. And we have to put them on the table. But we also have to, and John Lewis said it best, we have to tell our stories, tell of the success that you're doing across the country, and let people know that we can indeed make a difference in the lives of those who are currently incarcerated, and yet they are going to need us to reenter society, to help them pick up their lives and find affordable housing and health care and jobs. So this is an opportunity for policymakers over the next 2 days, and practitioners and service providers and community organizers, and yes, members of the clergy. And by the way, that was the best, sweetest, wonderful prayer over my food I've had in a long time. I know that wouldn't give you any acid reflux. Thank you, sir. God bless you for that. You can pray with me when I leave, too, because Joe said I shouldn't be on no planes. He don't know what he's talking about. I fly Air Jesus. And I just want to say that at the national level, the Leadership Conference on Civil Rights is going to be providing much of the groundwork, the leadership on many of these issues that you are going to be talking about over the next 2 days. This is part of their 100-day-plus agenda that the progressive community will rely on and rally behind as we seek to reform our government, as we seek to put in place the path for health care reform and clean energy reform and education initiatives that the President has also called for. And I am going to continue to call upon our federal leaders as well as our state leaders down in my native South to reform our felony enfranchisement and voting rights laws. It's a fundamental law, and we must give these citizens back their voting rights. I just want to say that we've come a long way. We've come this far by faith, but we've come this far because we were prepared for this movement for change. We were prepared for the election of Barack Obama. It started decades ago when men and women that came from this part of the country began to build the movement for change. We voted for change last fall. Now we have the opportunity to stand for change and to continue to fight for lasting change, permanent change. We must seize this moment because the public is still thirsting for change. And all we have to do is look at the President's approval rating to know that if we stand up now and advocate for these policies and for people in the community to prepare for this moment, they will accept it, and we will find in uncommon places people who are willing to help us produce the kind of change that we have always believed in. I'm excited about this moment. I never thought I would see this day, but this is a day that was coming regardless of whether or not we even imagine it. Because too many people planted seeds of hope. Too many people believed that change was possible, and too many people were willing to sacrifice their life to make it happen. I want to say in closing, because I mentioned a few moments ago that I was turning 50 later this year in December. And I mention that because I started my political career at the age of 9. So this is my 40th year. 59 congressional campaigns. I even came down for Jim Martin here in Georgia. 19 state and local campaigns, 7 presidential campaigns. Last year for Barack Obama, and only Barack Obama could get me to go to Nevada 9 times and never put a nickel in a slot machine. Florida 21 times, and I kept telling my friends I was working on my tan. The Keystone State, Pennsylvania, more than 13 times. Ohio, 12 times. I even went up to Alaska and saw a glacier. You betcha. I probably could have seen Russia too, but it was too cold. But having spent a lifetime seeing Cuba by sitting on the levees, I wasn't impressed. But had an assassin bullet not silenced Dr. King's prophetic voice, he would have turned 80 years old this month. He was, for many of us, he was a drum major for justice. And he inspired me and so many of my generation, too young to march, but yet he really inspired us to work for change and to believe in change. We're so close to that promised land that he saw the night before he was taken from us. We've worked hard to get to this moment. Let me remind you what my grandmother would tell us at night when she would call us in order our birth. Cheryl, Sheila, Donna, Tater, Chet, Lisa, Dimitri, Kevin, Ziola. And we ran in her room because she always had some nice hot gingerbread cookies. I tell my friends I can go to Weight Watchers, but the buttermilk biscuits and the gingerbread cookies, they don't melt. They don't go. I just have to reshape them. But Grandma was a woman of faith. She was born in Mississippi. I love Mississippi. My mother always told us if we were bad, we would go to Mississippi. Only Louisianians will tell jokes about folks from Mississippi. And you get a person from Louisiana and Mississippi in a room, we joke about Arkansas folks. You say, that's the only place we know that when people get a divorce, they say, well, we could still be brothers and sisters. But Grandma she was so strong, so vibrant, so wonderful, so beautiful, so faithful to her God. And she would tell us, do not grow weary in doing good, for in due season you'll reap a harvest if you don't give up. Do not grow weary in doing good. You all have done so much. You've planted so many seeds. This is your moment. This is your time. And I guarantee you, with this president, your harvest will come. Thank you, and God bless you. Thank you.